Article 220 Branch Circuit, Feeder, and Service Load Calculations. Part 1. General 220.1 Scope. This article provides requirements for calculating branch circuit, feeder, and service loads. Part 1 provides general requirements for calculation methods. Part 2 provides calculation methods for branch circuit loads. Parts 3 and 4 provide calculation methods for feeder and service loads. Part 5 provides calculation methods for farm loads. Informational note number 1. See examples in Informative Annex D. Informational note no. 2. See Figure 220.1 for information on the organization of Article 220. 220.3 Other articles for specific purpose calculations. Table 220.3 shall provide references for specific purpose calculation requirements not located in Chapters 5, 6, or 7 that amend or supplement the requirements of this article. 220.5 Calculations of voltages. Unless otherwise is, 4 proposes of calculating branch circuit and feeder loads. Nominal system voltages of 120, 120 to 140ths, 28Y 120, 240, 347, 480Y 277, 480, 60Y 347, and 600 volts shall be used. B fractions of an ampere. Calculations shall be permitted to be rounded to the nearest whole ampere, with decimal fractions smaller than 0.5 dropped. For uniform calculation of load, nominal voltages, as listed in 220.5a, are required to be used in computing the ampere load on the conductors. To select conductor sizes, refer to 310.15. Loads are calculated on the basis of volt-amperes or kilovolt-amperes kVA, rather than watts or kilowatts-kilowatt, to calculate the true ampere values. Table 220.3 Calculation references calculation article section or part air conditioning and refrigerating equipment. BRA and CH 440 circuit conductor sizing fixed electric heating equipment for pipelines and vessels. 427 branch circuit sizing fixed electric space heating equipment. Branch circuit sizing 420 for fixed outdoor electric dicing and snow melting equipment. 426 branch circuit sizing. Motors, feeder demand factor 430 motors, multi-motor, and combination load equipment 430 motors. Several motors or a motor S and other load S 430 over 600 volt branch circuit calculations 210 over 600 volt feeder calculations 215 phase converters. Conductors 455 storage type water heaters 420 to part for 427.4 420 for .3 426.4 430.6 430.5 430.4 210.19b 215.2b 455.6 420 to .11e 220.5 calculations of voltages, unless other voltages are specified. For purposes of calculating branch circuit and feeder loads, nominal system voltages of 120, 120 to 140ths, 28Y 120, 240, 347, 480Y 277, 480, 60Y 347, and 600 volts shall be used. B fractions of an ampere. Calculations shall be permitted to be rounded to the nearest whole ampere, with decimal fractions smaller than 0.5 dropped. Part 2. Branch circuit load calculations 220.10 General. Branch circuit loads shall be calculated as shown in 220.12, 220.14, and 220.16. 220.1 to lighting load for specified occupancies. A unit load of not less than that specified in Table 220.12 for occupancies specified shall constitute the minimum lighting load. The floor area for each floor shall be calculated from the outside dimensions of the building, dwelling unit, or other area involved. For dwelling units, the calculated floor area shall not include open porches, garages, or unused or unfinished spaces not adaptable for future use. Informational note: the unit values are based on minimum load conditions and 100% power factor and may not provide sufficient capacity for the installation contemplated. Exception no. 1. Where the building is designed and constructed to comply with an energy code adopted by the local authority, the lighting load shall be permitted to be calculated at the values specified in the energy code. Where the following conditions are met: 1. A power monitoring system is installed that will provide continuous information regarding the total general lighting load of the building. 2. The power monitoring system will be set with alarm values to alert the building owner or manager if the lighting load exceeds the values set by the energy code. 3. The demand factors specified in 220.42 are not applied to the general lighting load. Exception no. 2. Where a building is designed and constructed to comply with an energy code adopted by the local authority and specifying an overall lighting density of less than 13.5 voltamperes 13.5 square meters 1.2 voltamperes 1.2 FT2, the unit lighting loads in Table 220.12 for office and bank areas within the building shall be permitted to be reduced by 11 voltamperes 11 square meters 1 voltamperes 1 FT2. 220.1 for other loads, all occupancies. In all occupancies, the minimum load for each outlet for general use receptacles and outlets not used for general illumination shall not be less than that calculated in 220.1 for a through L, the loads shown being based on nominal branch circuit voltages. Exception: the loads of outlets serving switchboards and switching frames and telephone exchanges shall be waived from the calculations. Specific appliances or loads. An outlet for a specific appliance or other load not covered in 220.1 for B through L shall be calculated based on the ampere rating of the appliance or load served. Table 220.1 to general lighting loads by occupancy unit load type of occupancy M to feet to armories and auditoriums 11 banks 39B barber shops and beauty 33 parlors churches 11 clubs 20 to courtrooms 20 to dwelling units a 33 garages a commercial 6 storage. Hospitals 20 to hotels and motels. Including 20 to apartment houses without provision for cooking by tenants industrial commercial loft 20 to buildings lodge rooms 17 office buildings 39B restaurants 20 to show. OLS 33 stores free 3131 to B31 to 231 to 2221 to 31 to B2331 for warehouses storage in any of the preceding occupancies except 1, family dwellings and -1 dwelling units of 2 family and multi-family dwellings, assembly halls and auditoriums halls, corridors, closets. Stairways storage spaces 3 voltamperes 11161 to 31 for volt-amperes/C 220.1 for J. C 220.1 for K. B. Electric dryers and electric cooking appliances in dwellings and household cooking appliances used in instructional programs. Load calculations shall be permitted as specified in 220.54 for electric dryers and in 220.55 for electric ranges and other cooking appliances. C. Motor outlets. Loads for motor outlets shall be calculated in accordance with the requirements in 430.22, 430.24, and 440.6. D. Luminaires. An outlet supplying luminaire shall be calculated based on the maximum voltampere rating of the equipment and lamps for which the luminaire is rated. E. Heavy-duty lamp holders. Outlets for heavy-duty lamp holders shall be calculated at a minimum of 600 voltamperes. F. Sign and outline lighting. Sign and outline lighting outlets shall be calculated at a minimum of 1200 voltamperes for each required branch circuit specified in 600.5. G. Show windows. Show windows shall be calculated in accordance with either of the following: 1. The unit load per outlet as required in other provisions of this section to at 200 voltamperes per linear 300 mm 1 foot of show window. H. Fixed multi-outlet assemblies. Fixed multi-outlet assemblies used in other than dwelling units or the guest rooms or guest suites of hotels or motels shall be calculated in accordance with H1 or H2. For the purposes of this section, the calculation shall be permitted to be based on the portion that contains receptacle outlets. 1 where appliances are unlikely to be used simultaneously, each 1.5 meters 5 feet or fraction thereof of each separate and continuous length shall be considered as one outlet of not less than 180 volt-amperes. 2 where appliances are likely to be used simultaneously, each 300 millimeters 1 foot or fraction thereof shall be considered as an outlet of not less than 180 volt-amperes. I receptacle outlets. Except as covered in 220.1 for J and K, receptacle outlets shall be calculated at not less than 180 volt-amperes for each single or for each multiple receptacle on one yoke. A single piece of equipment consisting of a multiple receptacle comprised of 4 or more receptacles shall be calculated at not less than 90 volt-amperes per receptacle. This provision shall not be applicable to the receptacle outlets specified in 210.11 C1 and C2. J. Dwelling occupancies. In one-family, two-family, and multi-family dwellings and in guest rooms or guest suites of hotels and motels, the outlets specified in J1, J2, and J3 are included in the general lighting load calculations of 220.12. No additional load calculations shall be required for such outlets. 1. All general use receptacle outlets of 20 ampere rating or less, including receptacles connected to the circuits in 210.11 C3 to the receptacle outlets specified in 210.52 and G3 the lighting outlets specified in 210.70 and B. K. Banks and office buildings. In banks or office buildings, the receptacle loads shall be calculated to be the larger of 1 or 2 on the calculated load from 220.14 I to 1 volt-amperes per square meter or 1 volt-ampere FT to all other outlets. Other outlets not covered in 220.14 through K shall be calculated based on 180 volt-amperes per outlet. 220.16 loads for additions to existing installations. Dwelling units. Loads added to an existing dwelling unit S shall comply with the following as applicable. 1. Loads for structural additions to an existing dwelling unit or for a previously unwired portion of an existing dwelling unit, either of which exceeds 46.5 square meters 500 FT2, shall be calculated in accordance with 220.12 and 220.14. 2. Loads for new circuits or extended circuits in previously wired dwelling units shall be calculated in accordance with either 220.12 or 220.14, as applicable. B. Other than dwelling units. Loads for new circuits or extended circuits in other than dwelling units shall be calculated in accordance with either 220.12 or 220.14, as applicable. 220.18 Maximum loads. The total load shall not exceed the rating of the branch circuit, and it shall not exceed the maximum load specified in 220.18 A through C under the conditions specified therein. A motor-operated and combination loads. Where a circuit supplies only motor-operated loads, Article 430 shall apply. Where a circuit supplies only air conditioning equipment, refrigerating equipment, or both, Article 440 shall apply. For circuits supplying loads consisting of motor-operated utilization equipment that is fastened in place and has a motor larger than 1/8 horsepower in combination with other loads, the total calculated load shall be based on 125% of the largest motor load plus the sum of the other loads. B. Inductive and LED lighting loads. For circuits supplying lighting units that have ballasts, transformers, autotransformers, or LED drivers, the calculated load shall be based on the total ampere ratings of such units and not on the total watts of the lamps. C. Range loads. It shall be permissible to apply demand factors for range loads in accordance with Table 220.55, including Note 4. Part 3. Feeder and service load calculations. 220.40 General. The calculated load of a feeder or service shall not be less than the sum of the loads on the branch circuit supplied, as determined by Part 2 of this article, after any applicable demand factors permitted by Part 3 or required by Part 5 have been applied. Informational note: see examples D1A through D10 in Informative Annex D. C. 220.18b for the maximum load in amperes permitted for lighting units operating at less than 100% power factor. 220.42 General lighting. The demand factors specified in Table 220.42 shall apply to that portion of the total branch circuit load calculated for general illumination. They shall not be applied in determining the number of branch circuits for general illumination. 220.43 Show window and track lighting. The show windows. For show window lighting, a load of not less than 660 voltamperes linear meter or 200 voltamperes linear foot shall be included for a show window, measured horizontally along its base. Informational note, see 220.1 for G for branch circuits supplying show windows. B. Track lighting. For track lighting in other than dwelling units, or guest rooms or guest suites of hotels or motels, an additional load of 150 voltamperes shall be included for every 600 mm to feet of lighting track or fraction thereof. Where multi-circuit track is installed, the load shall be considered to be divided equally between the track circuits. Exception: if the track lighting is supplied through a device that limits the current to the track, the load shall be permitted to be calculated based on the rating of the device used to limit the current. 220.4 For receptacle loads other than dwelling units. Receptacle loads calculated in accordance with 220.1 for H and I shall be permitted to be made subject to the demand factors given in Table 220. 42 or Table 220.44. Table 220.42 Lighting load demand factors portion of lighting load to which demand factor applies demand type of occupancy voltamperes factor percent dwelling units first 3000 at 100 from 3001 to 120,000 at 35 remainder over 120,000 at 25 hospitals asterisk first 50. 0 or less at 40 remainder over 50,000 at 20 hotels and motels, including apartment houses without provision for cooking by tenants asterisk first 20,000 or less at 50. From 20,001 to 100,000 at 40 remainder over 100,000. At 30 warehouses first 12,500 or less at 100 storage remainder over 12. 500 at 50 all others total voltamperes 100 asterisk The demand factors of this table shall not apply to the calculated load of feeders or services supplying areas in hospitals, hotels, and motels where the entire lighting is likely to be used at one time, as in operating rooms, ballrooms, or dining rooms. Table 220.4 For demand factors for non-dwelling receptacle loads portion of receptacle load to which demand factor applies voltamperes demand factor percent. First 10 kVA or less at 100 remainder over 10 kVA at 50. 220.50 Motors. Motor loads shall be calculated in accordance with 430.24, 430.25, and 430.26 and with 440.6 for hermetic refrigerant motor compressors. 220.51 Fixed electric space heating. Fixed electric space heating loads shall be calculated at 100% of the total connected load. However, in no case shall a feeder or service load current rating be less than the rating of the largest branch circuit supplied. Exception: where reduced loading of the conductors results from units operating on duty cycle, intermittently, or from all units not operating at the same time. The authority having jurisdiction may grant permission for feeder and service conductors to have an ampacity less than 100%. Provided the conductors have an ampacity for the load so determined. 220.5 To small appliance and laundry loads at dwelling unit. A small appliance circuit load. In each dwelling unit, the load shall be calculated at 1,500 voltamperes for each 2-wire small appliance branch circuit as covered by 210.11c1. Where the load is subdivided through 2 or more feeders, the calculated load for each shall include not less than 1,500 volt-amperes for each 2-wire small appliance branch circuit. These loads shall be permitted to be included with the general lighting load and subjected to the demand factors provided in Table 220.42. Exception: the individual branch circuit permitted by 210.5 to be 1. Exception no. 2. Shall be permitted to be excluded from the calculation required by 220.52. B. Laundry circuit load. A load of not less than 1,500 volt-amperes shall be included for each 2-wire laundry branch circuit installed as covered by 210.11c2. This load shall be permitted to be included with the general lighting load and shall be subjected to the demand factors provided in Table 220.42. 220.53 Appliance load at dwelling unit S. It shall be permissible to apply a demand factor of 75% to the nameplate rating load of 4 or more appliances fastened in place, other than electric ranges, clothes dryers, space heating equipment, or air conditioning equipment, that are served by the same feeder or service in a one-family, two-family, or multi-family dwelling. 220.5 For electric clothes dryers, dwelling unit S. The load for household electric clothes dryers in a dwelling unit S shall be either 5,000 watts volt-amperes or the nameplate rating, whichever is larger, for each dryer served. The use of the demand factors in Table 220.5 shall be permitted where 2 or more single-phase dryers are supplied by a 3-phase, 4-wire feeder or service. The total load shall be calculated on the basis of twice the maximum number connected between any two phases. Kilovolt amperes kVA shall be considered equivalent to kilowatts kilowatt for loads calculated in this section. 220.55 Electric cooking appliances in dwelling units and household cooking appliances used in instructional programs. The load for household electric ranges, wall-mounted ovens, counter-mounted cooking units, and other household cooking appliances individually rated in excess of 13 kilowatts shall be permitted to be calculated in accordance with Table 220.55. Kilovolt amperes kVA shall be considered equivalent to kilowatts kilowatt for loads calculated under this, where 2 or more single-phase ranges are supplied by a 3-phase, 4-wire feeder or service. The total load shall be calculated on the basis of twice the maximum number connected between any two phases. Informational Note No. 1. See the examples in Informative Annex D. Informational Note No. 2. See Table 220.56 for commercial cooking equipment. 220.56 Kitchen equipment other than dwelling unit S. It shall be permissible to calculate the load for commercial electric cooking equipment, dishwasher booster heaters, water heaters, and other kitchen equipment in accordance with Table 220.56. These demand factors shall be applied to all equipment that has either thermostatic control or intermittent use as kitchen equipment. These demand factors shall not apply to space heating, ventilating, or air conditioning equipment. However, in no case shall the feeder or service calculated load be less than the sum of the largest two kitchen equipment loads. 220.60 Non-coincident loads. Where it is unlikely that 2 or more non-coincident loads will be in use simultaneously, it shall be permissible to use only the largest load S that will be used at one time for calculating the total load of a feeder or service. 220.61 Feeder or service neutral load. A basic calculation. The feeder or service neutral load shall be the maximum imbalance of the load determined by this article. The maximum imbalance load shall be the maximum net calculated load between the neutral conductor and any one ungrounded conductor. Exception: for 3-wire, 2-phase or 5-wire, 2-phase systems, the maximum imbalance load shall be the maximum net calculated load between the neutral conductor and any one ungrounded conductor multiplied by 140%. Table 220.5 for demand factors for household electric clothes. Dr. Year's number of demand factor drive years %. 1 for 105.85675756586095510501 for 7122 47% minus 1% for each dryer exceeding 11 to 4. 40 to 35% minus 0.5% for each dryer exceeding 2343 and over 25%. Table 220.55 Demand factors and loads. For household electric ranges, wall-mounted ovens, counter-mounted cooking units, and other household cooking appliances over 13 kilowatts rating. Column C to be used in all cases except as otherwise permitted in Note 3. Demand factor %. See notes column. A number of appliances less than 31 kilowatts rating. Column C maximum demand kilowatts. C notes not over 12 kilowatts rating. Column B 312 kilowatts through 83 for kilowatts rating 180808 to 75651137055 for 665011756 to 4520659 for 3 to 1756 for 022853336 to 3951. 35 to 410 for 93 for to 511 for 73 to 26. 1 to 453 to 2713 for 33 to 2814 for 13 to 2915 for 03 to 301639 to 831173 to 83 to 1837 to 833193 to 83 for 2035 to 835 to 13 for 2636 to 233 to 637 to 33 to 2638 to 431 to 639 to 530 to 640 to 63030 to 431 for 03020 to 15 kW. Plus 1 kilowatt for each range for 150302 to 0516031861 and over 30 1625 kilowatts plus 30 for kilowatts for each range. Notes 1. Over 12 kilowatts through 27 kilowatts ranges all the same rating. For ranges individually rated more than 12 kilowatts but not more than 27 kilowatts. The maximum demand in column C shall be increased 5% for each additional kilowatt of rating, or major fraction thereof by which the rating of individual ranges exceeds 12 kilowatts. 2. Over 83 for kilowatts through 27 kilowatts ranges of unequal ratings. For ranges individually rated more than 83 for kilowatts and of different ratings, but none exceeding 27 kilowatts, an average value of rating shall be calculated by adding together the ratings of all ranges to obtain the total connected load using 12 kilowatts for any range rated less than 12 kilowatts and dividing by the total number of ranges. Then the maximum demand in column C shall be increased 5% for each kilowatt or major fraction thereof by which this average value exceeds 12 kilowatts. 3. Over 13 for kilowatts through 83 for kilowatts. In lieu of the method provided in column C, it shall be permissible to add the nameplate ratings of all household cooking appliances rated more than 13 for kilowatts but not more than 83 for kilowatts and multiply the sum by the demand factors specified in column A or column B for the given number of appliances. Where the rating of cooking appliances falls under both column A and column B, the demand factors for each column shall be applied to the appliances for that column, and the results added together. 4. Branch circuit load. It shall be permissible to calculate the branch circuit load for one range in accordance with Table 220.55. The branch circuit load for one wall-mounted oven or one counter-mounted cooking unit shall be the nameplate rating of the appliance. The branch circuit load for a counter-mounted cooking unit, and not more than 2 wall-mounted ovens, all supplied from a single branch circuit, and located in the same room, shall be calculated by adding the nameplate rating of the individual appliances and treating this total as equivalent to one range. 5. This table shall also apply to household cooking appliances rated over 13 for kilowatts and used in instructional programs. Be permitted reductions of service, or feeder supplying the following loads shall be permitted to have an additional demand factor of 70% applied to the amount into 120.61B1 or portion of the amount into 120.61B2 determined by the following basic calculations. 1. A feeder or service supplying household electric ranges, wall-mounted ovens, counter-mounted cooking units, and electric dryers. Where the maximum imbalance load has been determined in accordance with Table 220.55 for ranges, and Table 220.54 for dryers to that portion of the imbalanced load in excess of 200 amperes where the feeder or service is supplied from a through-wire DC or single-phase AC system, or a 4-wire, 3-phase system, or a through-wire, 2-phase system, or a 5-wire, 2-phase system. Informational note: see examples D1A, D1B, D2B, D4A, and D5A in informative Annex D. See prohibited reductions. There shall be no reduction of the neutral or grounded conductor capacity applied to the amount into 120.61 C1, or portion of the amount in C2, from that determined by the basic calculation. 1. Any portion of a through-wire circuit consisting of 2 ungrounded conductors, and the neutral conductor of a 4-wire, 3-phase, Y-connected system to that portion consisting of nonlinear load supplied from a 4-wire, Y-connected, 3-phase system. Informational note: a 3-phase, 4-wire, Y-connected power system used to supply power to nonlinear loads may necessitate that the power system design allow for the possibility of high harmonic neutral conductor currents. Part 4. Optional feeder and service load calculations. 220.80 General. Optional feeder and service load calculations shall be permitted in accordance with Part 4, 220.82. Dwelling unit, a feeder and service load. This section applies to a dwelling unit having the total connected load served by a single 120 to 140 volt or 28Y 120 volt set of 3-wire service or feeder conductors with an ampacity of 100 or greater. It shall be permissible to calculate the feeder and service loads in accordance with this section instead of the method specified in Part 3 of this article. The calculated load shall be the result of adding the loads from 220.8 to B and C. Feeder and service entrance conductors whose calculated load is determined by this optional calculation shall be permitted to have the neutral load determined by 220.61. B. General loads. The general calculated load shall be not less than 100% of the first 10 plus 40% of the remainder of the following loads: 133 volt-amperes per square meter or 3 volt-amperes FT2 for general lighting and general use receptacles. The floor area for each floor shall be calculated from the outside dimensions of the dwelling unit. The calculated floor area shall not include open porches, garages, or unused or unfinished spaces not adaptable for future use. To 1500 volt-amperes for each 2-wire, 20 ampere small appliance branch circuit, and each laundry branch circuit covered into 110.11 C1 and C2. 3. The nameplate rating of the following A. All appliances that are fastened in place, permanently connected, or located to be on a specific circuit. B. Ranges, wall-mounted ovens, counter-mounted cooking units. C. Clothes dryers that are not connected to the laundry branch circuit specified in item 2D. Water heaters for the nameplate ampere or kVA rating of all permanently connected motors not included in item 3. C. Heating and air conditioning load. The largest of the following 6 selections load in kVA shall be included. 1. 100% of the nameplate rating S of the air conditioning and cooling. 2. 100% of the nameplate rating S of the heat pump when the heat pump is used without any supplemental electric heating. 3. 100% of the nameplate rating S of the heat pump compressor and 65% of the supplemental electric heating for central electric space heating systems. If the heat pump compressor is prevented from operating at the same time as the supplementary heat, it does not need to be added to the supplementary heat for the total central space heating load. For 65% of the nameplate rating S of electric space heating if less than for separately controlled units. 5. 40% of the nameplate rating S of electric space heating if for or more separately controlled units. 6. 100% of the nameplate ratings of electric thermal storage and other heating systems where the usual load is expected to be continuous at the full nameplate value. Systems qualifying under this selection shall not be calculated under any other selection in 220.8 to C. 220.83 Existing dwelling unit. This section shall be permitted to be used to determine if the existing service or feeder is of sufficient capacity to serve additional loads. Where the dwelling unit is served by a 120 to 140 volt or 28Y 120 volt 3-wire service, it shall be permissible to calculate the total load in accordance with 220.83 or B. Where additional air conditioning equipment or electric space heating equipment is not to be installed, the following percentages shall be used for existing and additional new loads. Load kVA percent of load first 8 kVA of load at 100 remainder of load at 40 Load calculations shall include the following: 1. General lighting and general use receptacles at 33 volt-amperes M. 2 or 3 volt-amperes FT2 as determined by 220.1 to 2150 volt-amperes for each 2-wire. 20 ampere small appliance branch circuit and each laundry branch circuit covered into 110.11 C1 and C3. The nameplate rating of the following A. All appliances that are fastened in place, permanently connected, or located to be on a specific circuit. B. Ranges, wall-mounted ovens, counter-mounted cooking units. C. Clothes dryers that are not connected to the laundry branch circuit specified in item 2D. Water heaters B, where additional air conditioning equipment or electric space heating equipment is to be installed. The following percentages shall be used for existing and additional new loads. The larger connected load of air conditioning or space heating, but not both, shall be used. Other loads shall include the following: 1. General lighting and general use receptacles at 33 volt amperes a square meter or 3 volt amperes, FT2 as determined by 220.12 to 1500 volt amperes for each 2-wire, 20 ampere small appliance branch circuit, and each laundry branch circuit covered in 210.11 C1 and C2 the nameplate rating of the following: A. All appliances that are fastened in place, permanently connected, or located to be on a specific circuit. B. Ranges, wall-mounted ovens, counter-mounted cooking units. C. Clothes dryers that are not connected to the laundry branch circuit specified in item 2D. Water heaters 220.8 for multi-family dwelling. A feeder or service load. It shall be permissible to calculate the load of a feeder or service that supplies 3 or more dwelling units of a multi-family dwelling in accordance with Table 220.8 for instead of Part 3 of this article if all the following conditions are met. 1. No dwelling unit is supplied by more than one feeder. 2. Each dwelling unit is equipped with electric cooking equipment. Exception: when the calculated load for multi-family dwellings without electric cooking in Part 3 of this article exceeds that calculated under Part 4 for the identical load plus electric cooking. Based on 8 kilowatts per unit, the lesser of the two loads shall be permitted to be used. 3. Each dwelling unit is equipped with either electric space heating or air conditioning, or both. Feeders and service conductors whose calculated load is determined by this optional calculation shall be permitted to have the neutral load determined by 220.61. B. House loads. House loads shall be calculated in accordance with Part 3 of this article and shall be in addition to the dwelling unit loads calculated in accordance with Table 220.84. C. Calculated loads. The calculated load to which the demand factors of Table 220.8 for apply shall include the following: 1. 3 volt amperes M2 or 3 volt amperes FT2 for general lighting and general use receptacles to 150 volt amperes for each 2-wire, 20 ampere small appliance branch circuit, and each laundry branch circuit covered in 210.11 C1 and C2 the nameplate rating of the following: A. All appliances that are fastened in place, permanently connected, or located to be on a specific circuit. B. Ranges, wall-mounted ovens, counter-mounted cooking units. C. Clothes dryers that are not connected to the laundry branch circuit specified in item 2D. Water heaters for the nameplate ampere or kVA rating of all permanently connected motors not included in item 3.5. The larger of the air conditioning load or the fixed electric space heating load percent of load air conditioning equipment 100 central electric space heating 100 less than for separately 100 controlled space heating units first 8 kVA of all other loads 100 remainder of all other loads 40 to 120.85 to dwelling units. Where two dwelling units are supplied by a single feeder and the calculated load under Part 3 of this article exceeds that for 3 identical units calculated under 220.84. The lesser of the two loads shall be permitted to be used. 220.86 Schools. The calculation of a feeder or service load for schools shall be permitted in accordance with Table 220.86 in lieu of Part 3 of this article where equipped with electric space heating, air conditioning, or both. The connected load to which the demand factors of Table 220.86 apply shall include all of the interior and exterior lighting, power, water heating, cooking, other loads, and the larger of the air conditioning load or space heating load within the building or structure. Feeders and service conductors whose calculated load is determined by this optional calculation shall be permitted to have the neutral load determined by 220.61. Where the building or structure load is calculated by this optional method, feeders within the building or structure shall have ampacity as permitted in Part 3 of this article. However, the ampacity of an individual feeder shall not be required to be larger than the ampacity for the entire building. This section shall not apply to portable classroom buildings. 220.87 Determining existing loads. The calculation of a feeder or service load for existing installations shall be permitted to use actual maximum demand to determine the existing load under all of the following conditions. 1. The maximum demand data is available for a 1-year period. Exception: if the maximum demand data for a 1-year period is not available, the calculated load shall be permitted to be based on the maximum demand, continuously recorded over a minimum 30-day period using a recording ammeter or power meter connected to the highest loaded phase of the feeder or service, based on the initial loading at the start of the recording. The recording shall reflect the maximum demand of the feeder or service by being taken when the building or space is occupied, and shall include by measurement or calculation the larger of the heating or cooling equipment load, and other loads that may be periodic in nature due to seasonal or similar conditions. Table 220.86 Optional method to demand factors for feeders and service conductors for schools. Demand factor connected load %. First 33 Va per square meter plus, over 33 through 220 Va per square meter plus. Remainder over 220 Va per square meter. 3 Va FT2 at 103 through 20 Va, FT2 at 75 20 Va, FT2 at 25 to the maximum demand at 125% plus the new load does not exceed the ampacity of the feeder or rating of the service. 3. The feeder has overcurrent protection in accordance with 240.4, and the service has overload protection in accordance with 230.90, 220.88. New restaurants. Calculation of a service or feeder load, where the feeder serves the total load for a new restaurant shall be permitted in accordance with Table 220.88 in lieu of Part 3 of this article. The overload protection of the service conductors shall be in accordance with 230.90 and 240.4. Feeder conductors shall not be required to be of greater ampacity than the service conductors. Service or feeder conductors whose calculated load is determined by this optional calculation shall be permitted to have the neutral load determined by 220.61, Part 5 Farm Load Calculations. 220.10 General. Farm loads shall be calculated in accordance with Part V. 220.10 to farm loads of buildings and other loads. A dwelling unit. The feeder or service load of a farm dwelling unit shall be calculated in accordance with the provisions for dwellings in Part 3 or 4 of this article. Where the dwelling has electric heat and the farm has electric grain drying systems, Part 4 of this article shall not be used to calculate the dwelling load where the dwelling and farm loads are supplied by a common service. B. Other than dwelling unit, where a feeder or service supplies a farm building or other load having two or more separate branch circuits, the load for feeders, service conductors, and service equipment shall be calculated in accordance with demand factors not less than indicated in Table 220.102. Table 220.88 Optional method. Permitted load calculations for service and feeder conductors for new restaurants. All electric restaurant, not all electric restaurant load kVA. Calculated loads kVA call. Calculated loads kVA total connected 200 to 13 to 53 to 6 800 over 880% 10% amount over 200 plus 160.050% amount over 325 plus 170 to 0.550% amount over 800 plus 410.0 100% 50% amount over 200 plus 200.0 45% amount over 325 plus 260 to 0.5 20% amount over 800 plus 476.3. Note: add all electrical loads, including both heating and cooling loads, to calculate the total connected load. Select the one demand factor that applies from the table. Then multiply the total connected load by this single demand factor. Table 220.10 to method for calculating farm loads for other than dwelling unit. Demand factor ampere load at 240 volts maximum %. The greater of the following, all loads that are expected to operate 100 simultaneously, or 125% of the full load current of the largest motor, or first 60 amperes of the load, next 60 amperes of all other loads, 50 remainder of other loads, 25. 220.103 farm loads at total. Where supplied by a common service, the total load of the farm for service conductors and service equipment shall be calculated in accordance with the farm dwelling unit load and demand factors specified in Table 220.103. Where there is equipment in two or more farm equipment buildings or for loads having the same function, such loads shall be calculated in accordance with Table 220.102 and shall be permitted to be combined as a single load in Table 220.103 for calculating the total load. Table 220.103 method for calculating total farm load. Individual loads calculated in demand factor accordance with Table 220. 100 to percent largest load 100, second largest load 75, third largest load 65, remaining loads 50. Note: to this total load, add the load of the farm dwelling unit calculated in accordance with Part 3 or 4 of this article. Where the dwelling has electric heat and the farm has electric grain drying systems. Part 4 of this article shall not be used to calculate the dwelling load.